Everybody saw it, the exact moment Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez realized she had made the biggest mistake of her career. And for once, it wasn't the Green New Deal. She had walked into that hearing room with 3 cameras, 2 speechwriters, an Instagram strategy, and absolutely zero idea what was about to hit her. Because here's the thing about picking a fight with Donald J. Trump. A lot of people have tried it. Senators have tried it. Governors have tried it. 2 impeachments tried it. 4 indictments tried it. The entire mainstream media tried it for 8 consecutive years. They all had one thing in common. They lost. And now, a 5-year-old former bartender from Westchester County, who pretends to be from the Bronx, was about to learn the same lesson on live television in front of 14 million viewers. She thought she was the matador. Turns out, she was the Cape. The House Oversight Committee hearing room 2154 of the Rayburn House Office Building was standing room only by 8. 45 inches the morning, a full hour before the gavel was scheduled to drop. The official topic was government waste and accountability in federal job creation programs. But nobody in Washington believed that for a second. The real topic was a cage match, and everybody knew it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez arrived first, because she always arrived first when cameras were involved. She walked through the hallway in a carefully curated outfit, navy blazer, pressed white blouse, and a pair of sneakers that screamed, "I'm accessible," to anyone who didn't know they retailed for $320. Her social media team, 3 people, which was 2 more than most members of Congress employed for the purpose, flanked her like Secret Service agents. Except, instead of scanning for threats, they were scanning for angles. Good lighting, clean backgrounds, the kind of content that performs well between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern, when engagement peaks. She had posted an Instagram story that morning from her apartment. The luxury apartment in Navy Yard, D.C., the one with the rooftop pool, and the yoga studio, and the dog spa, though the camera was angled to show only a blank wall and her face, earnest and determined. About to hold the most powerful man in America accountable, she told her followers, "Wish me luck." Heart emoji, fist emoji. 2.4 million views in 47 minutes. She had rehearsed her opening statement 14 times in front of a mirror. She knew which words to emphasize, where to pause, when to let her voice crack just slightly the way it cracked during the border video, the way it cracked during the January 6th live stream. She had focus grouped the emotional beats with her communications director, who had assured her that righteous indignation with controlled vulnerability tested best with the 1-8-3-4 demographic. This was going to be the clip of her career. Donald Trump arrived 11 minutes late. Because Donald Trump always arrived 11 minutes late. Not 10, which would feel calculated. Not 15, which would feel rude. 11. Just enough to let the room marinate in anticipation without giving anyone a legitimate complaint. He came with 2 aides, no entourage, and a red tie that could be seen from the back row. He walked into the hearing room the way he walked into every room, like he already owned it, and was just stopping by to check on the renovations. He waved to the gallery, pointed at a reporter he recognized, and gave a thumbs up, nodded to the Republican committee members, and settled into the witness chair with the ease of a man who had testified before Congress, survived 2 impeachments, weathered 4 indictments, and been literally shot at, and was still somehow sitting upright and smiling. He looked at the cameras. He looked at the gallery. He leaned toward his aide and whispered something that the front row could just barely hear. Beautiful room. Great lighting. 14 million. Easy. AOC watched him from behind the committee dais, her jaw set, her notes arranged in a precise fan across the desk. She saw the smile. she saw the ease, and something in her, the competitive instinct that had driven her from bartending to Congress in 18 months, tightened like a guitar string. The chairman gave the hearing to order, read the procedural boilerplate, and recognized Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez for the first round of questioning. She didn't ask a question. She delivered a speech. "Mr. Trump, you are sitting in this room as an expert on job creation." She let the word expert drip with contempt. "So, let's establish exactly what kind of expertise you bring. You create jobs for undocumented workers at your golf courses. Workers you then demonize at your rallies for applause lines. You create jobs for contractors. Contractors you refuse to pay. You create jobs for lawyers, because you have been sued more times than any businessman in modern American history." She was rolling now, feeding off the energy of her supporters in the gallery, several of whom were wearing "Tax the Rich" t-shirts. Unaware of the irony that was about to unfold, you inherited $200 million from your father. You have never, not once in your entire life, known what it's like to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. You've never checked your bank account and seen $947? I have. I was a waitress and bartender in Manhattan, making $2.13 an hour plus tips, serving people who looked exactly like you. People who left bad tips and worse attitudes. Her voice rose. The practiced crack appeared right on schedule. So, when you sit in that chair, in your $5,000 suit, with your golden penthouse waiting for you in Manhattan, and you pretend to speak for working families, forgive me if I find that absolutely obscene. She paused for breath and pushed forward. The people who voted for you were conned. I know that's a word that makes people uncomfortable, but it's the truth. They were conned by a reality TV host who promised them the moon and delivered tax cuts for billionaires. They're working harder, earning less, drowning in medical debt. And where are you? Back on your golf course? Back in your penthouse? Because you never cared about them. You used them. You used poor people to get power. And that is the ugliest transaction in American politics. The progressive gallery erupted. Standing ovation from a dozen supporters. Two women in the front row were crying. Actually crying. With what appeared to be gratitude. AOC's social media coordinator was recording from 3 angles simultaneously. Within 90 seconds, the hashtag number AOC destroys Trump was trending nationally. She delivered the final blow with the confidence of someone who believed the fight was already over. Your time is over, Mr. Trump. The future doesn't belong to 7-8-year-old billionaires who think Twitter is a governance strategy. It belongs to my generation. The generation that will inherit the climate crisis you ignored, the debt you exploded, and the democracy you tried to overthrow. We are done with men like you. She sat back, lifted her chin, waited for the shattered silence of a man who had just been publicly destroyed. Donald Trump chuckled. Not a bitter chuckle, not a defensive laugh. The genuine, deep-chested chuckle of a man who has just heard something unexpectedly entertaining. He shook his head slowly, looked at the cameras, and then, in a move that would be replayed approximately 40 million times in the next 24 hours, he pointed at AOC and gave a little golf clap. 4 slow claps. The sound echoed through the hearing room like gunshots. "Wow," he said, leaning into the microphone. Honestly, that was pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. You've been practicing. I can tell. The hand gestures are new, very dramatic, very Broadway. You know, I actually built a theater once on Broadway, not far from here. Beautiful theater, still standing. Unlike your arguments. But we'll get to that." A ripple of laughter moved through the room, tentative, uncertain, but undeniable. "Now, you called me a con man, a failure, a relic, and a user of poor people. Fine. That's Tuesday for me. I've been called worse. Rosie O'Donnell called me worse. And well, she's Rosie. Nancy Pelosi called me worse. And she's actually, I think she retired. Good for her. The point is, I'm used to it. He shifted in his chair. The smile faded. Not into anger, but into something more focused, more dangerous. But here's the thing, Sandy. AOC's head snapped up. My name is Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. Your family calls you Sandy. It was on your Boston University ID. It was on your high school yearbook at Yorktown High in Westchester County. Not the Bronx. Westchester. Median household income. What is it? $137,000 a year? But we'll get to the whole girl from the Bronx thing later. I have it on the schedule. Believe me. The temperature in the room dropped. AOC's social media coordinator stopped recording. You want to talk about jobs? Trump continued. Let's talk about jobs. Because I have actually created jobs. Tens of thousands of them. Hotels, towers, golf courses, casinos. I've built more things than most countries. And you, Sandy. In 6 years in Congress, you have one signature accomplishment in the jobs department. He paused, leaned forward. The entire room leaned with him. You killed 25,000 of them in your district. Amazon. Remember? 25,000 jobs gone, exposed, destroyed by a woman who had been in Congress for exactly 14 days. He looked at her. The smile was gone. Shall we talk about that? Because I think your constituents, the ones riding the subway you won't take, would love to hear you explain it one more time. AOC opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time in her political career, the woman who had a viral comeback for everything had nothing to say. And Donald Trump hadn't even started. Trump settled into the witness chair like a man settling into a lazy boy, comfortable, unhurried, certain that nothing in this room could touch him. Let me tell you a story, he said. A beautiful story with a very sad ending, the saddest, because it didn't have to end the way it did. He wasn't reading notes. He didn't have notes. No manila folder, no leather notebook, just a man, a microphone, and the kind of memory that comes from decades of deal-making, where forgetting a number means losing millions. Amazon, biggest company in the world. Jeff Bezos, not my favorite guy. Frankly, he owns the Washington Post. Very unfair paper, but I'll give him credit. The man knows business, and in 2018, Amazon announced they were building a second headquarters, HQ2, and they picked, out of every city in America, every city in the world, they picked Long Island City, Queens, New York, right in your backyard, Sandy. Right in your district. He ticked off numbers on his fingers. 25,000 jobs. Direct, full-time, permanent jobs. Average salary, $150,000 a year. That's not minimum wage. That's not tips at the bar. That's doctor money. Lawyer money. That's your kids go to college. Your mortgage gets paid. Your mother sees a dentist money. On top of that, another 25,000 construction jobs to build the campus. Temporary, sure. But 2 years of full-time construction work for electricians, plumbers, ironworkers, painters. Real work, hard work. The kind of work that builds the middle class that you're always talking about on Instagram. And the tax revenue. Oh, the tax revenue. New York was going to receive $27.5 billion in tax revenue over 25 years. Billion with a B. For an investment of $3 billion in tax incentives. That's a 9-to-1 return. 9-to-1. In real estate, I've done some great deals, some of the best deals. But 9-to-1? That's a fantastic deal. Any deal maker in the world would take that deal. Any mayor, any governor, any rational human being. He paused. And then, you showed up. The two words landed like a judge's gavel. You had been in Congress for exactly 2 weeks, 14 days. You hadn't unpacked your office yet. You didn't have your parking pass. And you decided, on the basis of no business experience, no economics degree, no understanding of how tax incentives work, that 25,000 jobs paying $150,000 a year were bad for your district. You called it corporate greed. You organized protests. You tweeted. Of course, you tweeted. And you made it politically impossible for the local politicians to support the deal. So Amazon said, fine, we'll go somewhere else. And they did. They went to Virginia. Crystal City, Virginia. He looked around the room. Virginia got the jobs. Virginia got the tax revenue. Virginia got the future. Your district got a hashtag. Trump paused, and then did something unexpected. He seemed to drift off topic entirely. You know, I built a lot of things in Queens. My father built things in Queens. Fred Trump. Great man, tough guy, very tough. He built middle-class housing in Jamaica, Queens, in the 1950s. Real housing, real bricks, real families living in them. Before affordable housing was a catchphrase that politicians put on bumper stickers, my family was actually building it. There was a diner on Queens Boulevard, Donovan's, best cheeseburger in the entire city. I'm not kidding. I don't kid about burgers. I used to go there with my father when I was a kid. The owner, Tommy, knew every customer by name. Great guy. You know what Tommy would say about turning down 25,000 jobs? He shook his head slowly. Tommy would say, "You were out of your goddamn mind." And Tommy, God rest his soul, Tommy would be right. The tangent snapped back like a rubber band. But that's the difference between people who build things and people who tweet things. Builders understand that every job is somebody's rent. Every paycheck is somebody's kid's lunch money. Every position filled is somebody's dignity. And you killed 25,000 of them because Amazon didn't fit your brand. AOC leaned into her microphone, voice hard. Amazon was getting $3 billion in corporate welfare. $3 billion that could have gone to schools, to hospitals, to public transit. Stop. Stop right there. Trump held up one hand. $3 billion in tax incentives. Not $3 billion in cash. Not $3 billion from the city treasury. Incentives. That means Amazon would have received a reduction in taxes they hadn't paid yet. Taxes they would only pay if they came. The $3 billion doesn't exist without Amazon. It's not sitting in a vault somewhere. You can't spend it on schools, because it isn't real until Amazon shows up. He pointed at her. But you know what is real? $27.5 billion in revenue. That's what New York would have gotten. The $3 billion was the bait. The $27.5 billion was the fish. And you threw the fish back because you didn't like the bait. That's not economics, Sandy. That's stupidity. He turned to the gallery. By the way, you see that woman? Third row? Blue jacket? Maria. Maria, would you stand up for me, please? Stand up. A woman rose from her seat. Mid. 50S. Dark hair pulled back. Wearing a blue blazer that was clean and pressed, but not new. In her hands, she held a photograph. A group shot of herself surrounded by employees, all wearing matching uniforms that read Gutierrez Cleaning Services across the back. Maria Gutierrez, Trump said. She ran a cleaning company in Long Island City, had a contract lined up with Amazon. 40 employees. 40 families who were going to have steady work, not glamorous work, cleaning offices, maintaining facilities, but honest work, good work, the kind of work that doesn't make Instagram, but keeps the lights on. He looked at Maria. How many employees do you have now, Maria? Her voice was quiet but clear. 3. I had 40 ready. Now, 3. Trump let the number hang. Down from 40. Because when Amazon pulled out, half the commercial real estate in Long Island City collapsed. Maria didn't just lose the Amazon contract, she lost her other clients too. Because they left. Because you chased the anchor tenant out of the neighborhood and everyone else followed. He turned back to AOC. There's your policy result, Sandy. Not on a spreadsheet, not on a podcast. Right there. Row 3. Blue jacket. 3 employees. Maria sat down. She was holding the photograph very tightly. Trump straightened his tie. So, you killed 25,000 jobs for ideology? Fine. Politicians make mistakes. I've made mistakes. Not many, but a few. But here's what really gets me. You took the money that came into your campaign, the small donations, the $20 contributions from college kids and teachers, and you ran it through a financial maze that would make a Wall Street banker blush. Because for someone who hates dark money more than anyone in Congress, your own money is pretty dark. Let's turn on the lights. Trump adjusted his microphone and smiled. Not the showman smile, but the quieter one. The one that meant he was about to enjoy himself. 100% people-funded. No corporate PAC money. That's your thing, right, Sandy? It's on your Twitter bio, your website. Every speech, every interview. I don't take corporate money. Very clean, very pure. The people's champion. He nodded appreciatively. Beautiful branding. Really. I mean it. I know branding. I put my name on buildings, on stakes, on a university. I know a brand when I see one. Yours is top shelf. There's just one little problem. He held up one finger. It's a total lie. Your chief of staff, Saikat Chakrabarti. Smart guy. I'll give him that. He set up a very creative system. Very creative. 2 PACs, Justice Democrats PAC and Brand New Congress PAC. Those are political action committees. They take in donations. They're supposed to report where every dollar goes. That's the law. That's transparency. That's what you say you believe in. But then, Chakrabarti also set up a private company, Brand New Congress LLC, same name as one of the PACs. Very confusing, which was the point. An LLC is not a PAC. An LLC doesn't have to report its expenditures. It's a black box. You put money in one end, and nobody knows what comes out the other. It's beautiful from a con artist's perspective, and I should know. People have been accusing me of being a con artist for 40 years, so I recognize the craft. He leaned forward. $885,000 went from those PACs, the ones that take in your supporters' money, the $20 donations, the school teacher money, into that LLC for strategic consulting. $885,000 of strategic consulting. Nobody knows what that means. Nobody knows who got paid. Nobody knows where a single dollar went, because the LLC doesn't have to say. He paused, repeated the number. $885,000 gone into a company with no employees, no office, no website, just a bank account. A very, very active bank account. $885,000 of your supporters' money, gone. Now, I've been in business my whole life. I've moved money around, lots of money, billions, but I do it through companies, real companies, with buildings and employees and products. When someone moves almost $1 million through a paper company for strategic consulting, and nobody can say what the consulting was. Oh, and my favorite detail. You're going to love this. Your boyfriend, Riley Roberts. Nice guy, I'm sure. Very handsome. He got paid through the PAC for marketing consulting, but they didn't pay him directly. No. That would show up on the FEC filing with his name on it. They routed the payment through a third party, a middleman, so his name wouldn't appear. Now, it is totally, completely legal to put your boyfriend on the payroll. I've hired family. Everyone hires family. My kids work for me. That's fine. But you don't hide it. You don't run it through an intermediary so it doesn't show up, unless you're embarrassed about it, or unless it looks exactly like the kind of thing you've been telling your supporters you would never do. He counted on his fingers. No dark money, no corporate PAC money, 100% transparent. Except for the $885,000 nobody can trace. Except for the boyfriend on the hidden payroll. Other than that, totally transparent, crystal clear, like mud. AOC came back swinging, and she came back hard. Her voice had the raw edge of someone fighting for survival. Those allegations were pushed by right-wing attack groups. The FEC took no action, no fines, no violations. And you are sitting here lecturing me about campaign finance. She was standing now, pointing at him. You paid $130,000 in hush money to a porn star through a shell company. You were convicted of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. You are a convicted felon lecturing a congresswoman about financial transparency, the audacity. The Democratic gallery exploded. 15 seconds of sustained applause. Several supporters were on their feet. AOC's communications director was pumping her fist. For one bright, shining moment, it felt like AOC had turned the entire hearing on its head. The felonies, the hush money, the conviction, it was all true, and she had delivered it with the force of a prosecutor's closing argument. Trump leaned back in his chair. He adjusted his tie. He looked at the ceiling as if considering something. The pause stretched. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. 8 seconds. The gallery began to buzz. Had she gotten him? Was he finished? He looked back at the cameras and smiled. The smile of a poker player who has just watched you bet everything on a hand he folded on purpose. 34 felonies in a New York courtroom, with a judge who donated to my opponent, and a DA who ran his entire campaign on. What was the slogan? I'll get Trump. And here I am, still sitting in this chair, still talking, still president twice. They threw everything at me. Everything. Impeachments, indictments, a bullet, and I'm still here. And they're at home watching on cable. So, yeah, bring up the felonies. I wear them like a Purple Heart. They missed. The laughter from the Republican side of the gallery was immediate and loud. But Trump wasn't laughing. He leaned forward, and when he spoke, the humor was gone. But we're not here to talk about me, Sandy. We're here to talk about $885,000 that went into a paper company, and nobody can say where it ended up. You didn't answer the question. You went to the felonies. You went to the hush money. You went everywhere except the answer. He held up one finger. So, I'll ask one more time. Where did the money go? AOC looked at her lawyer. Her lawyer looked at the table. I thought so, Trump said. But look, money stuff is boring. People's eyes glaze over when you talk about PACs and LLCs and FEC filings. Let's do something fun. Let's talk about the single funniest night in the history of American politics. The night you, a self-described democratic socialist, wore a $30,000 dress that said, "Tax the rich," to a party where tickets cost $35,000. Because that, Sandy, that was the greatest comedy performance since Seinfeld. And I should know, I've been on TV more than Seinfeld. Longer, too. Trump's entire demeanor shifted. Lighter, looser. The stance of a comedian warming up a crowd. He was in his element now, and everyone in the room could feel it. September 2021. The Met Gala. Now, I love the Met Gala. Beautiful event. I've been multiple times. I know Anna Wintour. Lovely woman. Terrible political opinions, but great at what she does. The point is, I know how it works. You get invited. You pay $35,000 for a ticket. You wear something ridiculous. You eat food that costs $60 a bite, but weighs about as much as a Tic Tac. You pretend to like art that looks like somebody dropped a tray of paint. It's a whole production. Very New York. He paused for timing, and then Sandy shows up. She's wearing a custom-designed Brother Veli's gown. White. Floor length. Beautiful dress, actually. I'll give credit where it's due. But on the back, in giant red letters, it says, wait for it, tax the rich. He let the room absorb that for a moment. Now, I want to make sure everybody has the picture. She is wearing a dress worth approximately $30,000. She is attending a party where tickets cost $35,000. She is surrounded by hedge fund managers, tech billionaires, fashion executives, and celebrities whose net worth starts at 9 figures. She is drinking champagne that costs more per glass than a family meal in her district. And on her back, in letters big enough to read from the International Space Station, it says, tax the rich. He shook his head slowly, like a man who has just witnessed something both terrible and magnificent. I have been in show business my entire life. The Apprentice, 14 seasons. Miss Universe pageant, Saturday Night Live, I've hosted, I've produced, I've starred. And I am telling you, that was the greatest single performance I have ever seen. She should have won an Emmy, an Oscar, a Tony. Honestly, they should have invented a new award just for her. The Unbelievable Audacity Award. First recipient, Sandy Cortez. For wearing free clothes to a rich party to lecture rich people about paying taxes while paying nothing herself. Laughter, genuine, uncontrollable laughter, rolled through the hearing room. Even 2 Democratic committee members failed to contain themselves. One covered her mouth with her hand. The other looked down at his papers and shook with what he would later describe as a coughing fit. But here's where it stops being funny. Trump's voice dropped half an octave. The House Ethics Committee, her committee, not mine, run by her colleagues, investigated her Met Gala attendance, and they found violations, real violations. She accepted impermissible gifts. The dress, the accessories, the hair professional stylist, the makeup professional artist, a free ticket for her boyfriend. She didn't pay for most of it. The vendors waited months. Some of them only got paid after the investigation started, which is, a coincidence, I'm sure. The Ethics Committee wrote, and I'm not making this up, this is in their official report, that she received impermissible gifts and must bear responsibility. They made her pay an additional $3,000. A sitting congresswoman was found to have taken gifts she was not allowed to take from designers she didn't pay at a party that cost more than her constituents make in a month. And she, Sandy, the scourge of corporate corruption. She lectures me about ethics. Trump held up a hand. But wait, there's more. There's always more with this one. He began ticking items off on his fingers. Rapid fire, barely pausing between rounds. Green New Deal. No more fossil fuels. We're all going to die in 12 years. Absolute emergency. Code red. The planet is on fire. But her campaign, her personal campaign, spent $29,000 on Uber and Lyft. Liang Wen-jiuqian. Her campaign office in Queens is a 1-minute walk from the subway. 1 minute. 60 seconds. I had my people time it. They walked it. Leisurely pace. 60 seconds to the subway entrance. But Sandy takes an Uber, because the subway is for voters, not for the Congresswoman. Affordable housing. She talks about it every day, every speech, every post. Housing is a human right. Beautiful phrase. Great bumper sticker. Meanwhile, she lives in a luxury apartment in Navy Yard, D.C. $3,000 a month. Rooftop pool, yoga studio. And I love this one. A dog spa. A spa for dogs in the building where the Democratic Socialist lives. I own hotels. Actual hotels. With spas for people. And even I thought that was a bit much. He paused as if a thought had just occurred to him, though it very clearly hadn't. You know who doesn't have a dog spa? Eddie Martinez. He works at a hotel in Midtown. Has a family in the Bronx. The real Bronx, not the Westchester version. Eddie makes about $42,000 a year. He commutes on the subway every single day. Takes him an hour and 15 minutes each way. No Uber, no dog spa, no luxury apartment. You know what Eddie told me once? He said, "Mr. Trump, I don't need a congresswoman to tell me to skip meat for the environment. I skip meals because I can't afford them." I said, "Eddie, that's terrible." He said, "That's the Bronx. Snap back. That's the Bronx, Sandy. Not your Instagram version. The one where people can't afford the dog spa in your building, let alone the building itself." AOC tried to reclaim ground. Her voice had lost its earlier thunder but was still sharp. I grew up in the Bronx. My mother cleaned houses. My father died when I was 18. I was making tips to survive. You grew up in Yorktown, Trump said. Not loudly, just flatly. Westchester County. Zip code 10598. Median household income. $137,000 a year. One of the wealthiest suburbs in the state of New York. Your father was an architect. He ran a firm called Kirby Architects. Your mother cleaned houses, yes, in Westchester, not in the South Bronx. In Westchester, for wealthy families, including, by the way, some of the same people who attend the Met Gala. You went to Yorktown High School, rated among the best public schools in the state. Then Boston University, $48,000 a year. You have a degree in economics and international relations from one of the best private universities in America. There is nothing wrong with any of that. It's great. It's the American dream. He pointed at himself. I grew up in Jamaica Estates. Queens. Nice neighborhood. My father was successful. We had money. I had advantages. And I don't pretend otherwise. I never stood at a podium and said I was a poor kid from Queens, because I wasn't. I was a rich kid from Queens, who worked hard and built on what his father gave him. But you rebranded yourself. You took a perfectly respectable suburban upbringing and turned it into a struggle narrative. You put on the bartender story like a costume, and it worked. I'll give you that. It worked beautifully. Best rebrand since Kentucky Fried Chicken changed their name to KFC so people would forget the fried part. Same concept. Hide the thing that doesn't fit the brand. He looked at her. No smile. No humor. Just clarity. You didn't fight the system, Sandy. You joined it. You party with Anna Wintour. You live in a luxury building. You move money through shell companies. And you take Ubers 1 minute from the subway? You joined the club? You just kept the bartender apron on because it polls well with two-year-olds. And that's not fighting for the people. That's marketing to the people. The room was quiet. Not stunned quiet, like after Vance's mama speech. more like uneasy quiet. The silence of people realizing that something they believed might not be true. Trump reached for his water, took a sip, set it down. But look, the lifestyle stuff, the branding, the Yorktown thing, people can argue about that. Where you grew up, where you live now, what you wear, it's debatable. Fine. But there's something that isn't debatable, something that everybody saw, but nobody talks about. The crying, the tears, the performances. Because you have turned crying into a political weapon. Sandy, and I think it's time America saw how the trick works. For the first time in the hearing, Donald Trump was not performing. The showmanship, the tangents, the nicknames, the comedy timing that had kept the room oscillating between laughter and shock, all of it receded. What replaced it was something that the people who had known Trump longest recognized immediately. The builder's focus, the narrowed eyes, the lowered voice, the absolute stillness of a man who has found the load-bearing wall and is about to swing the sledgehammer. "I want to talk about crying," he said. "And I'm being serious right now. This matters. What I'm about to say matters. So pay attention." June 2018. The border, Tornillo, Texas. You went there. You wore white. Very photogenic. Credit to whoever picked the outfit. Your photographer was with you. Professional photographer. And you stood at a chain-link fence. And you cried big tears. Hands over your face, looking through the fence like you could see the suffering of the world on the other side. Those photos went everywhere. Every front page, every news website, every cable network ran them on a loop. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez overcome with grief at the border. They became iconic. They made you. Those crying photos were your Mona Lisa. One problem. Trump snapped his fingers. An aide stepped forward and handed him a tablet. Trump held it up to the room. First toward the committee, then toward the cameras, then toward the gallery. This is the photo everyone saw. The famous image. AOC in white, hands on the fence, face contorted with emotion. Beautiful composition, very moving, very effective. He swiped. And this is what was on the other side of that fence. A wider shot. The same fence. And behind it, an empty access road and a parking lot. No children, no cages, no detention facility. Parked cars and hot asphalt stretching to the horizon. She was crying at a parking lot. The words hung in the air like smoke. The photographer took the picture from an angle that made it look like she was seeing something terrible. She was seeing asphalt. But the tears were flowing. The hands were gripping the fence. The facial expression was, honestly, it was award-worthy. If there were Oscars for political theater, she'd have a shelf full. Now, were there real problems at the border? Yes. Were there children in difficult situations? Absolutely. But she didn't go where they were. The actual facilities weren't allowing her photographer inside. So, she walked to a fence around a parking lot, turned on the waterworks, and let the camera do the rest. And nobody in the mainstream media checked what was on the other side of that fence. He set the tablet down. But the parking lot wasn't the worst of it. After the crying photos, she went on to compare American border facilities to, and I want to make sure I get this right, because it's important, concentration camps. Her word, concentration camps. The same word we use for Auschwitz, Dachau, Treblinka, Bergen-Belsen. Places where 6 million Jews, men, women, children, babies, were systematically starved, tortured, gassed, and incinerated. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum asked her to stop. Jewish organizations across the country asked her to stop. Actual survivors, people with numbers tattooed on their arms, said it was offensive and trivializing. Her response? She said she was absolutely using the term correctly. She doubled down, because backing down doesn't perform well on social media. He paused. That's not courage. That's narcissism. And then came January 6th. He held up a hand preemptively. Bad day. Terrible day. I've said it before. People died. Officers were hurt. It should never have happened. I'm not here to debate January 6th, but here's what I'm here to say. After January 6th, Sandy went on Instagram Live. Always Instagram, always live, always performing. And she told the world she thought she was going to die, that rioters were banging on her door, that she was seconds from being murdered. She was in the Cannon House office building, a separate building from the Capitol. The rioters never reached her building. The person who knocked on her door was a Capitol police officer, coming to evacuate her, to save her. But she told 12 million Instagram viewers that she nearly died. She compared her experience to combat PTSD. She said, and this is a direct quote, that it felt like surviving sexual assault, a police officer knocking on your door to help you, compared to sexual assault, compared to combat trauma, while real officers were being beaten with flagpoles in a building she was never in. Trump leaned back, took the tablet again, swiped to a screenshot. Let me read you something you wrote. Your own words. February 2019. Tweet. The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. 12 years. It's been 6 years now. We're still here. The polar bear is still here. Florida's still above water, and I own a lot of property there, so I check regularly. Swiped again. Instagram. 2019. Caption from the border visit. I'll never forget the images of children in cages. You were looking at a parking lot, Sandy. Swiped again. Tweet. January 21. I had a very close encounter where I thought I was going to die. Close encounter with a cop doing his job. Some of us have actually been shot at. He touched his right ear briefly, almost unconsciously, referencing the assassination attempt that had grazed him months earlier. That's a close encounter, not a police officer knocking on your door. He set the tablet down. The showman was gone. The builder was gone. What was left was something simpler, a man telling the truth, because somebody needed to. You know what I keep thinking about? There's a woman named Carla. She works at a diner on Southern Boulevard in the Bronx. Your district. Been working there 22 years. Makes about $38,000 a year. 2 kids, a mother with diabetes, a landlord who just raised her rent for the 3rd time. Carla doesn't have time to cry at fences. Carla doesn't have time to go on Instagram and tell the world about her feelings. Carla doesn't have Instagram. She has a job. She has a life, a hard life, and she deals with it every single day. No cameras, no followers, no hashtags. That's the Bronx, Congresswoman. Not the version you perform on social media. The real one, where people are too busy surviving to make content about it. You built your entire political identity on tears and tweets. Every big moment, the border, January 6th, Amazon, the Green New Deal. You responded with emotion, not policy, with performance, not solutions. And the media loved it, because tears make better television than spreadsheets. But here's the problem with being a performer. Eventually, people look behind the curtain. They see the parking lot behind the fence. They find out you were in a different building. They check the math on the 1-2-year prediction. They Google Yorktown, Westchester. And once people realize the whole thing is an act, once they figure out that the tears come on cue and the outrage is scripted, the show is over. And I think, Sandy. He looked at her, and his voice, for just a moment, held something that might have been genuine sympathy. I think you already know that. I think you've been performing for so long that you don't remember which tears are real and which ones are for the algorithm. And if that's true, if you can't tell the difference anymore between what you feel and what you post, then I feel sorry for you. Honestly. Because that's not politics. That's a cage, and it's one you built yourself. The hearing room was so quiet that you could hear the air conditioning cycling. AOC's eyes were wet. Real wet. Not performed wet. Actually, genuinely wet. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her notes. The notes had nothing on them for this. Trump picked up his water glass, took a sip, set it down. One more thing, then I'll stop. Your signature policy. The one that's going to save the planet. $93 trillion. And I think the committee deserves to hear in plain English why that number would destroy every working family you claim to care about. Trump shifted forward. The emotional weight of the previous chapter was set aside with the efficiency of a man who has compartmentalized his entire life. Buildings in one box, politics in another, feelings in a vault somewhere deep in the sub-basement where nobody goes unless invited. The Green New Deal, he said, your baby, your masterpiece, the thing that's going to save the planet. $93 trillion. That's the independent estimate. Now, I work with big numbers. I've signed checks with a lot of zeros. But 93 trillion? That's not a budget. That's not even a number. That's a wish. That's a kid writing a letter to Santa and asking for every toy in the catalog. Dear Santa, I would like to restructure the entire American economy. Please deliver by 2030. Thank you, Sandy. Let me break it down so it makes sense. 93 trillion over 10 years. That works out to roughly $600,000 per American household. $600,000 per family. The average home in your district costs about $400,000. Your climate plan costs more than a house. You want every family in America to spend more on your environmental fantasy than they spent on their home. He didn't wait for a response. He was in deal-breaker mode, rattling off numbers the way he'd rattle off square footage and rental rates at a real estate closing. And here's the genius part. Your plan opposes nuclear energy. Nuclear, the cleanest, most efficient, most reliable power source on the planet. France runs 70% of their entire electrical grid on nuclear. Zero carbon emissions. But Sandy says no, because nuclear doesn't Instagram well. You can't put a nuclear reactor on a story with a fire emoji. Solar panels, very aesthetic. Wind turbines, very trendy. Nuclear? Boring. It just works. And apparently, working isn't good enough for the brand. Your office released a frequently asked questions sheet for the Green New Deal, a frequently asked questions document. And in it, I swear to God this is real. You can look it up. Well, actually you can't, because they deleted it. But we have screenshots. It promised economic security for those unable or unwilling to work. Unwilling, not unable. Unwilling. You wanted the federal government to pay people who don't feel like working. I've built buildings with 6,000 workers on a single job site. If I told those guys, hey, don't worry about showing up. You'll get paid anyway if you're unwilling to work. The building would still be a hole in the ground. You can't build anything if people are unwilling to work. But that's the difference between people who sign the front of a check and people who sign the back. Same frequently asked questions. Eliminate air travel within 10 years. Eliminate it. Replace it with high-speed rail. New York to Los Angeles by train. You know how long that takes? 67 hours. Almost 3 days. I've closed deals faster than that. I once bought a building in 2 hours. I'm not spending 3 days on a train to watch cornfields go by. That frequently asked questions was so embarrassing that your office deleted it from the internet and told reporters it was a draft released by mistake, a draft of a resolution you had already submitted to Congress. You don't get to submit something to Congress and then call it a draft. That's like handing someone a contract, watching them sign it, and then saying, "Oh, that was just a rough sketch. Try that in real estate. See what happens." He held up a hand. "But you don't have to take my word for it. Your own party rejected it." When Mitch McConnell and say what you want about Mitch, the man knows how to play the game. When Mitch called a Senate vote on the Green New Deal, you know how many senators voted yes? 0. Not one. Not even the Democrats who had co-sponsored it. Not even Bernie. They all voted present. Present. Which in Washington means, I want credit for the bumper sticker, but I'm not touching this thing with a 10-foot pole. Your own team sprinted away from your plan like it was radioactive, which, ironically, is what your plan says about nuclear energy. And you know who gets hurt by this? Not me. Not billionaires. I'll be fine. I'll drive whatever I want. Heat my house however I want. Fly wherever I want. That's the luxury of having money. The people who get hurt are the guy driving a 1-2-year-old pickup truck because he can't afford a $60,000 electric vehicle. The woman heating her home with natural gas because solar panels cost 20 grand to install. The factory worker in Pennsylvania whose entire industry disappears because you decided his livelihood is a moral crime. Those are supposed to be your people, Sandy. The working class, the little guy. But your plan would bankrupt the little guy. And then, when he's bankrupt and unemployed and can't afford to charge the electric car he was forced to buy, then what? A government job? A check for being unwilling to work? That's the future you're selling. AOC made one last attempt. Climate change is an existential threat. You said in 2019 that the world would end in 12 years. Trump interrupted. 12 years! It's been 6. We're still here. The oceans didn't swallow Manhattan. Alaska didn't melt. My golf course in Palm Beach is doing great. Better than ever. Actually, your timeline was wrong. Your costs are wrong. And your solutions would make everything worse for the exact people you claim you're trying to help. On the Democratic side of the dais, 2 committee members were looking at their phones, not texting, reading, probably the same thing. Their own prior statements endorsing the Green New Deal, which they were now mentally composing distances from. AOC's social media team had stopped filming approximately 12 minutes earlier. Their cameras were down. Their phones were in their pockets. For the first time in the hearing, for the first time perhaps in AOC's entire political career, the content machine was dark. Trump straightened his tie. We could keep going. I always have more. I have so much more. But I want to end with something different. Not about money, not about policy, not about Instagram, about the actual question you asked me at the beginning of this hearing, the one about the future. Because you said, my time is over. You said the future belongs to your generation. And I want to tell you why you're wrong. Not because I'm better than you. Because you made a mistake that somebody needs to point out before it's too late. AOC made her final stand. She stood up behind the dais, her voice cracking. Not with performance this time, but with the raw desperation of someone watching their narrative collapse in real time. You are a bully. You're a misogynist who attacks women because you feel threatened by strong women who— Stop, Trump said it quietly. Stop. 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 I've heard it. The whole country's heard it. Bully, misogynist, fascist, threat to democracy, Hitler, Putin, the Antichrist. I've been called all of them. I've been called things that haven't even been invented yet. I've been impeached, indicted, arrested, shot at, and banned from social media. And I'm still here. Still talking. Still president, twice. He looked at her. But nobody ever says what I'm about to say to you because everybody's too afraid of getting a mean tweet. So, I'll say it, because let's be honest, I've been canceled more times than a network TV show, and I'm still on the air. Highest rated show in politics. Many people say that. He paused. The humor drained from his voice like water from a bathtub. What was left was flat, direct, and surprisingly free of malice. You've been in Congress for 6 years. 6 years. In that time, you have passed 0 pieces of landmark legislation. Not one. Not a single bill with your name on it that changed somebody's life. I've checked. My people have checked. The Congressional Research Service has checked. 0. You've introduced resolutions. You've given speeches. You've been on magazine covers. Time. Vanity Fair. All of them. Very beautiful covers. Very flattering lighting. You've gone viral 100 times. You've been the subject of Netflix documentaries. But name one law. One law that you wrote that built something. One law that created a job. One law that put food on somebody's table. He waited. The silence was an answer. You can't. Because you didn't. Because that's not what you do. What you do is perform. You perform outrage on cue. You perform empathy for the cameras. You perform courage when the real thing would require sacrifice. But performance isn't governance. Instagram isn't infrastructure. And a hashtag isn't a highway. I built things. Real things. Buildings you can walk into. Hotels where people sleep. Golf courses where, yeah, people make fun of the golf courses. But you know how many jobs a golf course creates? Hundreds per course. Groundskeepers, cooks, caddies, bartenders even. Real paychecks, real direct deposits, real families fed. As president, I signed tax cuts that put money in people's pockets. I brokered the Abraham Accords, peace deals in the Middle East that everyone said were impossible. Everyone. The experts, the diplomats, the professors. Impossible, they said. And then I did it. I rebuilt the military. I started the wall. You can disagree with every single thing on that list. Fine, I welcome it. But I did things. Tangible things. Things you can measure. Things you can stand inside of. You tweeted things. And Sandy? There's a difference. He let that breathe. Then more quietly, you said the future belongs to your generation. Maybe it does. Probably it does. Time doesn't stop for anybody. Not for me. Not for you. But if the future is what you've shown us today, more hashtags instead of hard hats, more Instagram stories instead of infrastructure bills, more tears at parking lots instead of actually building parking lots, then the future has a problem. The future doesn't need more performers. It needs builders. People who can read a blueprint. People who can balance a budget. People who understand that the distance between a tweet and a skyscraper is called work. And that work is the one thing you can't fake. I don't see a single callus on your hands, Sandy. And until I do, until you've built something with your name on it that isn't a hashtag, don't tell me the future belongs to you, because the future belongs to whoever builds it. And right now, the only thing you've built is a brand. The chairman gave the closing statement. The committee thanks the witness for his testimony. Based on issues raised during today's proceedings, the chair will refer the campaign finance questions to the FEC for review and direct staff to compile a detailed economic impact report on the Amazon HQ2 withdrawal for the committee's records. Not dramatic, not thunderous, but sufficient. The political damage was done, and everyone in the room knew it. AOC gathered her papers. Her hands were steady. She had that much pride left, but her eyes were red, and the energy that had radiated from her like voltage at the beginning of the hearing was gone. She walked toward the side exit without looking at Trump, without looking at the cameras, without looking at anyone. At the door, she paused, turned slightly, as if considering one final retort, one last viral moment, one more clip for the algorithm. Then she decided against it. She walked out. Her social media team followed. For the first time in the documented history of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's political career, their cameras were powered off. The aftermath moved at the speed of the internet, which is to say, instantly and without mercy. Within 20 minutes, 3 hashtags occupied the top of every trending list in every English-speaking country on the planet. Number Billionaire Counterpunch was first. Number Sandy was second. Number Build Don't Tweet, a phrase Trump had never actually used, but which the internet had synthesized from his closing argument, was third, and climbing. The clips spread the way all devastating political footage spreads. First through partisan channels, then through mainstream media, then through the vast ungovernable swamp of social media, where context goes to die and only the most brutal moments survive. The most replayed segment, Trump reading AOC's own tweets back to her while she sat in silence, was viewed 63 million times before midnight. Fox News and Newsmax ran the hearing on a continuous loop, their chyrons cycling through variations of the same message. Trump dismantles AOC, but the story had escaped the conservative media ecosystem almost immediately. CNN ran a segment titled, "Did Trump Expose AOC's Authenticity Problem?" that featured a panel of increasingly uncomfortable progressive commentators struggling to defend what they had watched. MSNBC's coverage was noticeably shorter than usual, and their chyron, "rough day for Ocasio-Cortez," was the verbal equivalent of a white flag. Maria Gutierrez gave one interview outside the hearing room to a local New York reporter. She was still holding the photograph of her almost team. "She killed 40 jobs in my company with one tweet," Maria said. "I've been waiting 6 years for somebody to ask her about that. 6 years." The progressive response was swift, but fractured, and the fracture itself became the story. The defensive wing launched hashtags of their own. Number Stand with AOC, Number Trump is a bully, Number Billionaire Privilege. But beneath the official party line, in the comments and quote tweets and private group chats where real opinions live, something was shifting. The questions that had been whispered were now being typed out loud. Approximately 2 hours and 14 minutes after the hearing ended, AOC posted to Instagram. It was a selfie. Close-up, natural lighting, no makeup. Her eyes were red. The caption read, "They will never silence us. The fight for working families continues. They want us afraid. We will be brave." It received 400,000 likes within an hour. Impressive by most standards, below average for her. But the comments were different. The comments were new. The top comment, which accumulated 83,000 likes before the night was over, read, "Girl, nobody's silencing you." He asked where the $885,000 went. "You didn't answer." "That's not silencing. That's accountability." The second most liked comment, "Tax, the rich dress cost more than my rent for 5 months. I donated $20 to your campaign. Where did it go?" Third, "You told us the world was ending in 12 years. It's been 6. When's the update?" For the first time in her career, AOC's comment section was not a safe space. The algorithm that had built her was, for one night at least, working against her. A moderate House Democrat, speaking off the record to Politico, said something that would circulate through Washington for weeks. "She's been a liability for 3 years. Today, 14 million people saw what we've been saying in caucus meetings. She has no legislation. She has no coalition. She has a following, and a following is not the same thing as a constituency. Donald Trump walked out of the hearing room and into the hallway, where 37 reporters and 11 cameras formed an immediate wall of noise. He stopped, buttoned his jacket, pointed at a reporter he recognized. "Mr. President, was that too harsh?" "Too harsh? No, 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 no. I was actually very nice, very gentle. I could have gone much harder. I had more. Believe me, I had so much more. But she's young. She'll learn, or she won't." Either way, ratings today were incredible. I heard 14 million. Probably higher. People love this stuff. They love truth. They're not used to it, but they love it. Do you have any message for her? Trump adjusted his tie. For a fraction of a second, so brief that only 2 of the 11 cameras caught it, something crossed his face that was neither showmanship nor sarcasm. Something almost human. Yeah. Stop performing. Start building. Learn how to read a balance sheet. Get off Instagram for 5 minutes and write a bill that actually does something. She's smart. I've said that before. She's smart, but smart and useful are 2 different things. Right now, she's smart and useless. And that's a waste. He turned toward the exit, stopped, turned back. Oh, and tell her she still owes the ethics committee $3,000 for that dress. I would have picked up the tab, but I'm trying to set a good example. He straightened his jacket one final time and walked toward the motorcade. The door closed. The engine started. The black SUV pulled away from the Capitol and headed toward the highway. 11:47 p.m. The Navy Yard apartment, the one with the rooftop pool, and the yoga studio, and the dog spa. 3rd floor. Rent, $3,100 per month. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat on the couch. The nice couch, in the nice apartment, in the nice building, with her phone face up on the cushion beside her. The screen was bright with notifications, Instagram, Twitter, text messages, missed calls. Every platform she had mastered, every channel she had dominated, every algorithm she had bent to her will for 6 years, all of them were buzzing, pinging, vibrating with the wreckage of the day. She picked up the phone, opened Instagram, stared at the text field where she had typed 10,000 captions, launched a 100 viral moments, crafted the responses that had made her famous and feared, and followed by 14 million people. She typed, "Today was," deleted it. Typed, "What you saw today," deleted it. Typed, "The truth is," stared at it. The cursor blinked and blinked and blinked. For 6 years, she had the perfect post for every moment. Every crisis had a caption. Every attack had a clapback. Every stumble had a story. The algorithm loved her. The followers loved her. The performance never stopped, because the performance was the point, and the point was the performance. And somewhere in between, the line between who she was and what she posted had dissolved like sugar and water. Impossible to separate, impossible to taste apart. Tonight, for the first time, she had nothing to say. Not because she had been silenced, not because she had been bullied, not because she was afraid, because everything she could think of typing every hashtag, every caption, every clapback, every tearful selfie with a defiant caption sounded exactly like what the man in the red tie had said. She was a performance. She put the phone face down on the cushion. The screen went dark. The notifications continued to buzz against the fabric, muffled and distant, like applause in an empty theater. The bartender had walked into that hearing room to serve the billionaire a lesson he would never forget. Instead, It was the billionaire who left the tip.